I want to I want to start off with something because I don't know if this is a confession. I also, you know how that phrase "misery loves company." I saw an ad the other day for these glasses that help people that are colorblind to be able to see, and I've always wondered, like, I wonder what that's really like, because you don't really know what it's like if you're colorblind to know what it would be like to actually see color, because you've never seen color, so you don't know what it would be like. Does this make sense? It's kind of a weird thing to describe. I want you, don't say anything, and don't use your mouth right now. Later on in the worship experience, you can. How many of you, when you look at this at both campuses, raise your hand. How many of you see a number? Y'all need the Lord. Put your hands down. How many of you do not see anything other than dots? There's people all over. Look around. These are the people that love Jesus, and these are the people that Jesus forgot to put eyeballs in their head, because when I see this, some of y'all, they told me, I said, what number's in there? They said it's 57. Is that right? They told me it's 57. I had to ask, because when I see that, all I see is dots. Like, I see Dippin' Dots. That's all I see right there. I don't see anything else. Dippin' Dots for days. Dots, 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 dots. And when I take those colorblind tests, that's all I see. And I remember the first time I ever took it, I thought they were messing with me. You know what I mean? Like, they said, what number do you see in there? I thought that it was a joke. Like, if I said a number, they were going to say, haha, there is no number. But because I said I don't see a number, I thought they were just making up numbers. You know what I mean? So y'all are for real. This is a 57. It does not look like anything to me. It just is what it is. Dippin' Dots, which is awesome. The ice cream of the future, but it still has not really hit the market in terms of making it to the stores all as much as they said that it was going to. But for my life, my whole life, I've been blind. I've been blind to the number 57, and I've also been blind to color. Now, one thing that's interesting is that the reason I wanted to throw it up there was because I needed some kind of a segue to get to the fact that there's a lot of us that are blind to a lot of other things that are in our life. And for many of us, what I want to talk about today is the fact that it's pretty easy to be blind to blessing, because a lot of times that blessing comes in a package that you did not expect. That's what happens in our lives. Now, here's what is funny about that. It's not really funny, but I'll use that word. The thing that makes it funny is a lot of us are praying and asking God for blessing. A lot of us are praying and asking God for harvest. That's why I said the harvest is now. A lot of us are praying for that right now. We're saying, God, I pray that you would send the harvest in my life. I'm ready for harvest season. I'm ready to experience the breakthrough. I'm ready to experience all that harvest would bring in my life. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of us, we've been praying for something that we might already have our hands on. We just don't realize it as of yet. Matter of fact, I taught about this I think it was about 3.5 months ago to our staff. And not only was it to our staff, we have a thing where if you're a partner here, that's our term for volunteers. We call them partners because we don't think you're just a volunteer. We think you're far more than that. And we make that available for partners to come. It's like 4 o'clock every other Wednesday. And I was teaching this about 3.5 months ago, and then I have a friend of mine who preached on this about 2.5 months ago, and after watching that message, I had an even greater understanding of what it is that we were speaking about whenever we talk about this thing called harvest. But I said this a moment ago, and you said it too, because you repeated it just like you were supposed to. How many of you are ready for your harvest? Raise your hand if you're ready for your harvest, both campuses. That's good. You're ready. I could get people pumped up, man, about harvest season. It's not that hard. I mean, you can walk up on stage and I could talk about, I have music playing behind me, You have music playing behind you, and you walk up and you start off and you start talking about discouragement, and you start talking about disappointment, and you start talking about obstacles, and you start talking about pain, and you start talking about all the different difficulties that you have in your life. And then when the music starts picking up, you transition. And when you transition, you start talking about, but I believe the breakthrough is coming. I believe the harvest season is coming. I believe it's just around the corner. How many of you believe your harvest is now? I mean, right now, some of you are like, yeah, let's do that. I want harvest season. You know what I'm talking about? Like, and I don't even have music behind me. And I could do it if I wanted to. I could get you standing up and cheering, getting ready for harvest season, because who doesn't want the harvest? I mean, everybody wants harvest. I'm not trying to tell you not to want a harvest. That's a dumb thing not to want. You want harvest. We want harvest. I want harvest. How many of you, raise your hand again, are ready for your harvest? Raise your hand. That's good. Some of you are like, I don't know if I should raise my hand. I think it's a trick. I think he's setting us up. I'm not setting you up. This is real life. I want my harvest. I think you're ready for it too. You've worked hard. That's why you want the promotion. You worked hard, that's why you want the raise. You're ready for your harvest. You've sowed. Those of you that have been in church a while, you know these terms. You have sowed, and now you're ready to reap. You've sowed, you're ready to reap. You've sowed, you're ready for your harvest. Some of you, you've been waiting patiently. You've been doing everything you know to do. I mean, you have been praying, you've been working, you've been planning, you've been preparing, and you are waiting on your harvest to come. And you believe it's coming, you just haven't seen it yet because it's just around the corner, or it's just down the road, or it's coming in this next season. Whatever the case may be, that's the way that it is. Because harvest, the reason we want it is because in our minds, harvest is all about the payoff. The payoff. I mean, if I'm going to go through the process, I want to experience the payoff. That's not anti-Jesus. If I'm going to go through the process, I want to experience the payoff. Is this true? Nod your head at me. Say yes. I mean, if you're going to go through a difficult process, you want to experience the payoff. If you're going to go to the gym every day and work out, and you're going to eat healthy stuff that doesn't really taste all that good for a long time, right? You want to experience the payoff. You don't want to go to the gym when you're 50 pounds overweight for 6 months, eat healthy, go to the gym every single day, 6 months later, having done all that and still be 50 pounds overweight. You want to go through the process. The process is fine, but the process is because you want the payoff. You want your harvest to come. It's about the harvest. We want to experience the harvest. We want the payoff. In my mind, when I think about harvest, I think about if I'm going to work and I'm going to do all the things that I do and I'm going to try as hard as I can, I want the harvest season to come, because that's when you can, in my mind, I'm thinking that's when you can sit on the couch and you can throw your feet up and you can have a drink with a lemonade in it, and you can just enjoy, or a lemon with a lemonade in it. That doesn't even make any sense. I was going to say a lemonade with an umbrella in it. That's what I meant to come out of my mouth. You want to be able to sit there and enjoy the fruit of your labor. You want your harvest. You think that it's been a difficult season, and because it's been a difficult season, you're ready for the payoff to come, because when the harvest comes, when the payoff comes, your difficult season is going to transition into a much, easier season. That's your harvest. That's what it is that we think. That's what it is that we're waiting on. That's what it is that we're hoping for. That's what we're praying for. We're saying, man, this has been hard. This has been challenging. This season has been difficult. I'm ready to experience the harvest. I want some rest. I want the payoff. I want enjoyment. I want my harvest, and I want it now. Say, the harvest is now. That's good. Now, 2 weeks ago, I taught you, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we taught about John chapter 4, the story of the woman at the well. And this woman, she goes to the well in the middle of the day. She lived in a town called Samaria. The Jewish people and the Samaritan people hated each other. She went to the well in the middle of the day because she didn't want to be around people, because she had a bad reputation. People called her all sorts of names. So she went in the middle of the day when it was hot, instead of in the morning or in the evening when everybody else went. She went there because she didn't want to see anybody. And lo and behold, there's Jesus hanging out at the well, a Jewish rabbi, a Jewish guy who's now in this moment where he needs to have a conversation with this Samaritan woman, which was already super rare and awkward and weird. They have this conversation. She was thirsty, if you'll remember what we talked about when we talked about being thirsty. She was thirsty in more ways than one. And she has a life-changing encounter with Jesus. And when Jesus begins to speak into her life, some things happen. She puts her trust in him. She turns away from her life of sin that she had been living in, and now she's a follower of his. And what's interesting is that she leaves. I'll tell you the rest of the story later on, but she leaves to go back to tell all of the people that lived in her town about this man that she just met by the name of Jesus. The people she was trying to avoid, now she's running to in order to tell them about this man who had just changed her life. And when she leaves, the disciples, the followers of Jesus, they get back. And when they get back, Jesus starts having a conversation with them. And he says this, and I love it. I love it so much. He says to the disciples, don't you have a saying? In other words, this is a familiar term. Don't you say this all the time? Like, for example, every time I go somewhere outside of the South, they will say to me, they'll say, isn't that word that you guys always say? See, I just say you guys on purpose. They will say, isn't that term that you guys always say? Don't y'all usually say y'all instead of you guys, right? Like, that's a saying that you're used to in the South, y'all. For most of us, we didn't even know that y'all wasn't a term that other people didn't use. Most people in the world don't use the word y'all, except for the smart people that live down here. We use y'all because it's way easier to say y'all than it is you guys. You know what I mean? Like it's so much faster. Or if you're really from the north, you might say use guys. I don't know why you would say that. It's not the way that it should be said. It should be said y'all. And for the people that don't think that it's a word, look it up. It's in the dictionary. It's a real word. Even Wikipedia has the word y'all. I checked to make sure. And all things on Wikipedia are true. Now that we have that out of here, it says, don't you have a saying? Remember, he's talking to us, but he's not talking to us at the same time. At this moment, he's talking directly to the disciples who lived in that country during that time in that culture. Don't you have a saying? It's still 4 months until harvest. Now, for them, when Jesus said it, they would say, well, of course we do. I mean, that made all the sense in the world. It's like if I said, don't you have a saying? The word y'all. Well, we'd be like, well, yes. Well, when we hear, don't you have a saying, it's still 4 months until harvest, I want to look to Jesus and be like, well, no. We don't really have that saying. Like I have literally, in my life, I have never went up to a single person, been having dinner, enjoying hanging out, and been like, hey, bro, it's 4 months until the harvest. I've never said that. I've never said that before, not even one time. Nobody has ever said that to me. Nobody has ever stopped me and been like, Pastor, chase me down in the mall. This has happened before. Chase me down in the mall to tell me something. They've never looked at me and said, hey, and by the way, it's only 4 months until the harvest. I mean, nobody says that. That is not a saying that you and I have. If you say that all the time to people, you need to stop. That is a weird thing to say. But Jesus says, don't you have a saying, it's still 4 months until harvest. Now, if you go on, and I'm going to read the rest of these verses to you at the very end of this message. If you go on, what Jesus says is this. He says, I need to correct your thinking. The harvest is not in 4 months. Jesus says the harvest is now. The harvest isn't then, the harvest is now. I've said this before. I can't remember if I said it here or somewhere else, but it drives me crazy when people say that I'm next. When you say it to yourself, like talking about yourself, I'm next. You're not next, you're now. So what Jesus was trying to get at, he says, you gotta understand, the harvest isn't then, the harvest is now. The harvest isn't on that day, the harvest is on this day. The harvest isn't when you get blank, right? Because you can start thinking that way. Somebody told me one time, some of the best advice I ever got when it came to starting a church, they said, you better learn to enjoy the journey because the destination is a mirage. Because you can start thinking, whenever we get to blank, then we'll be able to do blank. Whenever we do this, then we'll be able to do that. Whenever we get a building for Kennesaw, whenever we start another campus a little bit north of here, whenever we start a campus a little bit west of here, that's when we'll be able to experience the harvest. No. Jesus was saying, the harvest is not then, the harvest is now. Right, because aren't we notorious for thinking that in order for us to experience the blessing of God, we've got to obtain something that we do not currently have? I got to get the promotion, that'll be the harvest. I got to get the raise, that'll be the harvest. I got to get married, that'll be the harvest. I got to get in a relationship, then I can experience the harvest. I got to be able to have a child, then I'll be able to experience the harvest. No. Jesus says, the harvest isn't then, the harvest is now. That's kind of what he was trying to get at. The problem is, this whole don't you have a saying, it's still 4 months until the harvest. Like that whole saying gets lost on us. And the reason it gets lost on us is because we don't understand the saying, because we don't know the context. And if you don't know the context, then you'll misunderstand the meaning. So for example, I hate it when people are driving on the highway. I use this illustration a lot because it happens to me a lot. But when I'm driving down the road and somebody cuts me off, my first reaction is not, well, praise the Lord, bless you, brother. I hope that the Lord blesses you and keeps you. And I hope that your family is blessed forever. That's not my first thought. Maybe that's your first thought because you love the Lord more than I do. That's not my first thought. My first thought is I got a gun. I got a horn in my car. I can hit the horn. I can speed up. You ever seen those people and you know they're speeding up trying to get around you and you're not even in a hurry. You just don't want them to get around you, so you also speed up. You know what I'm talking about? Because that GPS on your phone is telling you that there is an estimated time of arrival, and it is all a game to you. That number that comes up is not your estimated time of arrival. That's the time to beat, baby. That's the time you gotta beat. And when these jokers try to get in front of you, or when you're sitting at an intersection, and sometimes it's polite to let one person go, but have you ever been in a situation where the person in front of you thinks it's even more polite to let 4 people go, and every single person they let go, you're thinking in your mind, you are delaying my life. I'm going to miss out on Jesus. You know what I'm talking about? I know some of you were like, you need counseling. That's true. But what if the person that cuts you off, what if you knew the context? Because to me it is, that person's rude and they're in a hurry and they're trying to take my spot. What if you found out that the person that was in their passenger seat was pregnant and their water broke 30 minutes ago and they're trying to get to the hospital so that they don't have a baby on 75? Because if you knew that their wife was pregnant, and this is not normally the case, but if it was, and she's getting ready to push out a baby right there on West Paces Ferry Road, and you're like thinking to yourself, I'm going to help her get to the hospital, right? Like if you knew the context, it would change everything about your course of action, would it not? If somebody was in an emergency, you would either get out of their way or shoot, if it's me, you'll help open things up. I'll go in front of them and honk my horn and get people out of the way just because I have an excuse to. When you understand the context. I remember one time I called to report a drunk driver because this joker was in front of me going nuts. And I said, I was talking to the operator. This was when I was a little bit younger. And I said, what should I do? They said, whatever you do, don't lose them. I was like, seriously? I can stay with them. They said, don't get too close, but stay with them so you can tell us where to go. And so they were driving fast, y'all. And so I'm like, I have an excuse from the law. The po-po told me I could drive, baby, and I was going. You know what I'm talking about? It was like the greatest blessing of my life. That was my harvest. Say the harvest is now. That's what I was saying. The harvest is now. No, but if you knew the context, sometimes if we know the context, it gives us a little bit more insight into the meaning. Nod your head if you know what I'm saying. If we know the context, sometimes it can change everything. So when we hear about harvest, here's what we hear. I mean, I mentioned it a moment ago, but it bears repeating, is that when we hear harvest, I hear payoff. When I hear harvest, I hear rest. Because I don't know anything about farming. I don't go to farms to get my food. I go to grocery stores. When I hear harvest, I hear ease. I picture in my mind the ability to sit in a chair with my feet up, to enjoy the work that I've been doing for so long. I picture in my mind the ability to be able to sit back and enjoy all the hard work that's been going into this moment, and finally the process is done and the payoff has begun. Harvest. My harvest is now. The only problem is, what if the only reason I feel that way is because I've misunderstood the context? What if the reason I feel that way is because I don't know that much about harvest? What if the reason I feel that way is because I'm not a farmer? Because I bet, is there anybody, and when I ask you this question, there's always that one guy and there's always that one girl. I'm gonna ask you at both of our campuses if you are a farmer. I'm not talking about you have a tomato plant. I'm not talking about one time you planted this, that, or the other. I'm talking about a farm where it requires tractors and it requires all kind of things, and it is your income and your livelihood. How many of you are or were a farmer? Raise your hand at both of our campuses. Do you see? That's why this verse is crazy. Don't you have a saying, it's still 4 months until harvest? Because we misunderstand the context because nobody in here was honest enough to say, I used to be a farmer or I still am. When I hear harvest, I told you, I think about ease. I think about being able to experience the payoff. I think about all that stuff. But do you know what a farmer hears when he hears harvest? A farmer hears work. When a farmer finds out it's harvest season, he gets up out of his chair and puts on his work gloves. Who was Jesus talking to? People who understood farming. And Jesus says, don't you have a saying that it's only 4 months until harvest? He'll give you this verse, and I'll read it to you in a little bit. But what he's getting to is, but the harvest isn't then, the harvest is now. And what he's saying is, it's not time to sit down, it's time for you to stand up. Your harvest is ready, but you're going to have to put your work gloves on if you want to reap it. Now, doesn't that change everything about harvest? Harvest season, get this, harvest season is the hardest season. Because you get to pick when you plant. You don't get to pick when you harvest. Because if you're sick and you're not feeling good and it's time to plant, you can wait until the next day and it's not going to mean anything. But if it's time to harvest and it's time to reap and you're sick and you're not feeling real well and you choose not to go out there and reap what it is that God has provided, then what it is that you were going to reap will actually turn to rot. Because you misunderstood your harvest. Maybe the reason that it's so easy to be discouraged in this life is because we've misunderstood our season. I've learned over the years to embrace the silence. Because sometimes it's not the moments where everybody claps and everybody says amen and everybody says that's right and everybody says heck yes. And at Freedom Church, sometimes people don't use heck, they use other words. It's amazing. But sometimes the most powerful moments are the moments where you say something, you stop talking, and everybody just looks at you like, uh-oh. Maybe the reason that we're so discouraged in life is because we've misunderstood our season. Maybe the answer to our prayer has already arrived at our house. It just came in a package we didn't expect. See, I thought harvest was going to feel exhilarating. I thought it was going to feel amazing all the time. I'll know harvest because, man, it's going to be like being on a roller coaster where you're screaming and you're enjoying it and it's awesome. That's what I picture. That's what I think about when I think about harvest. But what if the picture that I had in my head wasn't the picture that Jesus was trying to communicate at all? What if that's not what harvest is all about? See, a lot of times, most of us that are praying for harvest, we're just praying for a break. Lord, my harvest is now. Harvest is here. And if we think that that's the way harvest is going to be, when it shows up and it requires us to do more work, we'll keep praying for a harvest even though it's already arrived. What if the sign that you're busy is a sign that the harvest is here? What if it's a sign that in the middle of your discouragement, what if it's a sign that the harvest is here? What if the fact that life is hard right now is a sign that your prayer has already been answered? What if the fact that things are so chaotic in your life are actually the harvest that you prayed for 15 years ago when you prayed for a house full of kids and now you got them, and as a result, even when you get off work, you're going back into work whenever you walk through your front door? Your harvest is here. It works in parallel with the message I did years ago called Full Net Problems. That's your harvest. Full net problems are the problems that people with empty nets would love to have. It's harvest season. It's harvest season. The fact that you're in the middle of a discouraging moment is a fact that is a sign that your harvest season is either here or it's right in front of you, ready, waiting on you to step into it. What if that's the way that Jesus meant it whenever he began to have this conversation? See, we've been doing this series called Potential, talking about the difference between pros and amateurs and how we can experience everything that God has for us. Pros work the harvest. Amateurs wait for harvest. Pros work the harvest. Amateurs wait for harvest. You know what I learned? Pros want the harvest. Amateurs want the harvest. The only difference is that pros know they have to work when it arrives. Amateurs miss the harvest because it shows up in a package they didn't expect. So you pray and say, God, I pray that you would help our church to grow. God, I pray for me. I pray that you would help our church to grow. Help us to reach more people. Help us to do this. Did you know every single time we reach more people, it gets more and more complicated? Which means every time we reach more people, our systems break down and we have to create new ones. We have to buy new stuff. We have to build bigger buildings. We have to do expansions, which we're getting ready to start over there on our kids' expansion within the next 2 weeks at our Ackworth location. We have to start thinking about buying a permanent facility in Kennesaw. We have to start thinking about more and more campuses. It's just, did you know that it gets harder and it gets more crazy? God, I pray that you would help me to have a kid. Every single time you have a kid, life gets more crazy. I hear people say this, we're going to wait to have kids till we're ready. I know these people, they didn't have kids, they couldn't have kids for a while, and they started trying to adopt kids, and then they adopted like a whole slew of kids, and then they found out that she's also pregnant, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my dear God, you're going to go from 0 to about 5 in about a couple weeks. And you know what? There's going to be days where they're like, this is freaking nuts. What in God's name were we praying for? You know what they're experiencing? Harvest. That's harvest. You think I made that story up. The only reason it came to mind because I saw them sitting in front of me. That's harvest. You're like, I want the promotion. You get the promotion. And you know what comes with promotion? More responsibility. Man, and then you start saying stuff like this, I'm so busy now. Careful what you complain about because you might be complaining about the answer to your prayer. Your harvest showed up, it just showed up in a package you didn't expect. You thought the promotion meant more money, less work. That's hilarious. You need to pray for a harvest of smarts because right now you're lacking. I'm just going to wait to get married till I can afford it. Define afford it. You got to define some of these terms for me. I've been praying for a relationship and then I got in, I found out how hard it was. That's your harvest. All those years you prayed to get married, all those years you prayed to have friendships with people. Did you know you can't have friendships with people if there is no conflict? People talk about, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm more than a conqueror. I'm more than a conqueror. That's fine. But the fact that they use the word conqueror implies that there's something that has to be conquered. It's your harvest. Your harvest is now. Say, my harvest is now. You know that there's a saying, I think it was Thomas Edison, don't hold me to it, pretty sure it was. And he said, opportunity is missed by most people because it comes dressed in overalls and it looks like work. I'm going to change one word. Harvest is missed by most people because it comes dressed in overalls and it looks like work. What if the thing we've been praying for has been sitting on our doorstep all along? We just never opened the package because we didn't like the packaging. The harvest is now. Matter of fact, this lady, for sake of time, I want to keep going. It says, I told you she has this encounter with Jesus and she runs back to her village. The people she was trying to avoid, now she wants to go speak to, because here's an indicator that your life has actually been changed by Jesus, is that you want other people's lives to be changed by Jesus. That's why when I hear about churches that don't want to grow, I know that it's a church filled with people that have never encountered Jesus. If you don't want your church to grow, you should put up a sign out front that says, "We're full, go to hell." Y'all are laughing, I'm dead serious. Because if your life's been changed by Jesus, you want everybody that you see to encounter Jesus. They came out of the town and they made their way toward him. Did you know that the only reason they came out of the town and made their way toward him was because some lady went and ran her mouth? You know how to run your mouth. I know how to run my mouth. We've done it in a damaging way for years, right? She ran her mouth for the right reason, and the whole town comes out. They make their way toward Jesus. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, "Rabbi, eat something." Because remember, they went to go get Jesus some food. This is a funny story. They go to get Jesus some food. They go to Taco Bell, and they bring it back. And here comes this lady, and here comes all these people that they didn't really like, because remember, they were Jewish, and these people were Samaritans. But he said to them, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about." Then his disciples said to each other, "Could someone have slipped him a taco?" Jesus says, "Taco? My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work." Say finish. My food is to finish the work. Don't you have a saying, "It's still 4 months until the harvest"? Listen to what Jesus says. This is great. I tell you, open your eyes. Did you know sometimes people walking around with their eyes open still, in essence, have their eyes closed? Just because your eyes are open doesn't mean that you're seeing everything. I mean, I can't even see the number 57, and when I look at a bunch of dots. He says, open your eyes and look at the fields. Now, why did he tell them to look at the fields? Because it was in the fields where all these Samaritan people were making their way towards Jesus. Open your eyes, look out at the fields. You see that woman running and all those thousands of people running behind her? You see that? They are ripe for harvest. Open your eyes. You're not going to see it unless you open your eyes. Open your eyes, look at the fields. The harvest is now. Open your eyes and look at our city when you drive home. The harvest is now. Open your eyes when you drive through Ackworth. The harvest is now. Open your eyes when you drive through Kennesaw. The harvest is now. This past week, I was driving through Cartersville. Open your eyes and look at Cartersville. The harvest is now. Open your eyes and look at Dallas and Hiram. The harvest is now. Open your eyes. You got to look. Open your eyes and look at your school. The harvest is now. Open your eyes and look at your place of employment. The harvest is now. Open your eyes and look at your neighborhood. The harvest is now. Open your eyes and look in your own house. The harvest is now. You've been missing it because you were looking for a different package. You thought you were waiting on a season where there wasn't going to be any obstacle. That's not a thing. Every season of life is going to be a difficult season of life, just in its own way. You got to open your eyes, look at the fields, because the harvest is now. The reason Jesus said it was because when they saw the harvest, the disciples were more worried about the food. I think there's a lot of people that call themselves followers of Jesus that are more focused on the meal than they are the mission. If you're more focused on the meal rather than the mission, you'll know it. Because what dominates your thinking? What dominates your heart? What dominates your wallet? Your checking account? Are we more focused on the meal than we are the mission? Because Jesus says, the harvest, you don't gotta wait. He says, you don't gotta wait 4 more months for the harvest to show up. The harvest is right in front of you. The harvest has been here the whole time. You can wait for it if you want, if you're an amateur, but if you're a pro, you're gonna work for it right here, right now. It's harvest time. It's harvest season. Is it always gonna feel exhilarating? Is it always gonna feel like you're on top of the mountain? No. The reason you go to the top of the mountain is to hear from God, so that when you go back down into the valley, you actually have something to say. The harvest is now. How many things is it in your life that you've been praying for where God has seemed silent, but the reason he seemed silent was because the package you've been praying for was sitting on your doorstep? The harvest is now. Even Jesus, when he came to this earth and lived a perfect sinless life for 33 years, you know what he was doing, what he was fighting for? He was fighting for a harvest of righteousness so that people could be made right with God. His harvest was not later, his harvest was now. When Jesus died on the cross, he wasn't dying on the cross so that he could experience the harvest. He died on the cross because as he was dying, he was in the middle of the harvest of forgiveness that was going to be unleashed on the world. When Jesus was put in the ground and was risen from the grave, he wasn't waiting on the payoff to come when you and I would turn our lives over to him. No, it was in that moment that he was experiencing the harvest of a changed life, making it possible for life to be available to every single person that was ever going to step foot on this planet that we call Earth. His harvest was now. That was his opportunity for us, and this is our opportunity for other people. I mean, even next week I think is going to be one of the most incredible Sundays we've had in a long time. I'm praying for dozens and dozens and dozens of people to put their trust in Jesus. Can I tell you how it will be made possible? If we unleash a church who believes their harvest is now. It's not just true in the context of the church, it's true in the context of your life. The harvest is now. It's not then, it's now. You're not next, you're now. The fact that you're dealing with difficulty is a testament to the fact that your harvest is here. It's here. It's here. Look to somebody to your left or right and say, it's here. Now look to the person you didn't choose the first time and say, it's here. It's here. Your harvest is here. It's here. You just got to choose. Are you going to keep waiting on it because it's on your porch? Do you think it's going to pick itself up and walk itself into your living room and throw itself onto your lap on that couch? Or do you think you got to get up and you got to go get it? We got to get it. The harvest is now. Maybe you're in this room today and you're thinking, man, I want my harvest, but the first thing I want is a relationship. If Jesus earned a harvest of making people right with God, and he earned a harvest of forgiveness, and he earned a harvest of life, how do I tap into that? How do I tap into a relationship with God through the person of Jesus? How do I even wrap my mind around that? It's pretty simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. I say it's simple because it's not complicated. Simple just means what he wants you to do is just to say to him, Lord, the best way I know how. You already did all the work. The only work you want from me is to believe that Jesus is the Son of the living God, and to believe that Jesus is the only way. And as a result, he can make all things new in your life. He can forgive you of all your sin, change you from the inside out. He can do more in a moment than religion could do in a lifetime. Your harvest is now. If that's something you want, in just a moment, I'm going to pray a prayer. I'm going to ask you to pray it with me. It's not magical. It's actually very biblical. You're just saying words that are indicative of what your heart desires, and you're placing your trust in the only one who can change you. Matter of fact, at both of our campuses, if that's you, all over this room, I want you to bow your head and close your eyes. If you're ready to turn your life over to Jesus and put your trust in him, then just pray this prayer with me as I pray it out loud. Say, Lord, I know that I'm a sinner, but I know that you died on the cross for my sin. The best way I know how, I'm turning from my sin and I'm turning to Jesus. Lord, just like you changed that lady's life at the well, I'm asking you to change my life at this place called Freedom Church. Lord, I believe you can, and I believe you will. With nobody looking around, with your head still bowed and your eyes still closed, if you're in this room and you would say, you know what, today, I ask Jesus to step into my heart, whether you're here at Ackworth or you're at Kennesaw or you're watching online, I want you right where you are, right this moment. If you just prayed to receive Jesus, I want to let you know that's the greatest decision that you could ever make. I want to place a gift in your hands, but the first thing I need you to do is I need you to make it possible for me to see who you are. We've got people standing around the room at both of our locations. All we're going to ask you to do in just a moment is to raise your hand high, just long enough for us to place that in your hands. Once you get that card, you can put your hand down. But anybody today would say, today, I'm placing my trust in Jesus. If that's you, raise your hand high at both of our campuses right here, right now. Come on, clap your hands, Freedom Church. I see your hands all over the room, really, at both campuses. Raise your hand high until you get that card. Once you get that card, you can put your hand down. I know some of them are making their ways down the rows. That's great. Now I want everybody to look at me real quick. How many of you would say, you know what? If I'm honest, and I'm raising my hand, there's times I misunderstand my season. Raise your hand. Sometimes I misunderstand my season. Look to the person to your left and your right and say, the harvest is now. The harvest is now. It's now. It's not later. It's now. God's going to send you out. And when he sends you out, I'm praying that you would go out just like that lady did. Not only in your own individual life, but that you would go out and make a difference with the individual life that you have been given. He's called you. He's equipped you. The fact that you're asked is proof that you're able. And my desire is that we would no longer misunderstand our season, that we would know that the harvest is here. The harvest is now. And as a result, we can experience all that God has for us right here in the middle of this moment. Dear Lord, I love you and I'm grateful for you, and I pray even now that you would give us the courage and the boldness, not just to take this message and file it away, but to take this message and to apply it to our everyday lives, day in, day out, minute in, minute out, because we need the touch of God. We need to experience the favor of God. Lord, I believe that the harvest is not later. The harvest is not next. The harvest is now. The harvest is not there. The harvest is here. And God, I thank you for the fact that that truth, if we can wrap our brain around it every single day, will change us from the inside out. I love you and I'm grateful for you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.